Welcome to the program, everyone. Now today we're going to be talking about feet, or rather what we sometimes wear on our feet, slippers. And I hear you thinking, why is he making a program about slippers? Well, I thought the same thing until I did a little research, and like Alice going through the looking glass, I discovered a fascinating backstory behind these particular slippers. And to tell you about that, please allow me to introduce you to a delightful Norwegian couple, Ingar and Margunn Eide. Ingar, Margunn, welcome to Viking.TV. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Now, the two of you have created a company called Tova, T-O-V-A, Tova. But before we talk about how you started it, maybe I could ask you just to introduce yourselves, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your company, Tova, is and what it makes.
Hello, I'm Ingar. Grew up in a rural area, far away from neighbors and other people, surrounded by goats, sheep and cattle, high in the mountains of Norway. Yeah. My profession is a builder, but the last 20 years I've mainly been working with slippers, as Alastair mentioned. When I don't work, I like to go hiking, mountain hiking, outdoor living with my wife, which is also my colleague, and with my dog.
Thank you, Ingar. Thank you.
So wool has become alive, and we are addicted to wool both at work and also in our leisure time with wool clothes. Yeah.
And Margunn,
Yes.
tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Margunn, and as you have probably realized, I'm married to Ingar. We've been married for almost 30 years now, and we have 3 children. And when we were in our early 30s, we moved to Mongolia and with our children, and this was a life-changing experience for us. And it led to us now working in Tova.
Okay, well, you just, Margunn, you just dropped in rather casually. In our 30s, we moved to Mongolia, which is not something that everybody does on a regular basis. Just tell us. Okay, well, why don't you just tell us why you made that decision?
Yeah.
Yes, if you look Mongolia 20, 30 years ago, there was quite big things happening in that region. The Soviet Union collapsed in a way, and Mongolia, which wasn't directly ruled by the Russians, they were a part of this area, and was called a satellite state. So they were in quite deep need of help for their everyday, and a lot of people went to Mongolia at that time to contribute into building Mongolia as a modern society. We as well went there as aid workers to give our contribution, and we went into a wool project which has turned to become our Tova now. We'll talk a little bit more about the wool project later, but I can say a little bit about Tova now in the beginning, which is a hybrid between being an aid project and a business enterprise. And we said we were there as aid workers 20 years ago. We moved back after a couple of years, and then we have been working with this since then. And my role when I was in Mongolia was to export, find an export channel for Mongolian wool products into the world, into Europe and into the countries we knew about. And Tova today is a company that is making mainly slippers, wool slippers, but also other kind of products connected to keeping us warm during cold winter.
And how much did you know about Mongolia before you went there?
Not much. We were reading a bit, and we knew that it has some common things with Norway, with the cold winters, with the quite few people living there, with a lot of space around them. So some similarities to Norway, but also a lot of differences.
Because I've done a lot of traveling in my life, but I've never been to Mongolia, and I suspect that a lot of people watching this haven't either. But I have read that there is a lot of poverty and unemployment there, that in winter it gets extremely cold, down to minus 40 degrees centigrade, which is, I think, about minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's pretty cold, even for Norwegians. So it sounds like a tough country. What I'd love to know is what were your first impressions when you arrived there?
Yeah. Well, we came there as a family with 2 young children, and our first impression was, wow, this is cold. It was between 20 and 30 minus degrees, and everything was quite white and gray. But we met a very warm-hearted people, and that was the big difference. Yeah. So we found that people, they live quite rough lives, struggling with the cold, sometimes struggling to survive through tough winters. But this warmth between people, this was really very nice experience for us. And later on, getting to know people, getting friends, and meeting the nomadic families. Some of them, they had very little. They were rich having cattle, but have very little items. They have their tent and they move around, but seeing how they are satisfied with their everyday life, the calm surrounding them, being out on the steps, experience the silence. It's amazing. Yeah.
And how did you communicate with them? I mean, do you speak Mongolian, or did you use?
Yeah, this was quite, we came there knowing nothing. We could say hello. It's Sembeno in Mongolian. So we could say this, and then our first task was to learn the language. So we had this language teacher, and she knew Russian, we knew English, and this was our starting point.
And how old were your children when you went there?
Yeah, our youngest, he was 1 year. And the eldest, she was 5. And then the third child, she came along while we were living there. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And you were living, this wasn't just a visit, this was to live.
Yeah. We lived there for 2.5 years. And I remember this really strange feeling when we did pack all our things and we were on the plane going to Mongolia, and I was there thinking, leaving everything that was known and just going into something totally unknown, but still it felt very right for us to do this.
I think it's brave. I think you were very brave to do that. It takes courage to do something like that. Well, I congratulate you. Maybe this is a good point, Ingar and Margunn, to should we take a little look at just a short video, which will give people watching an idea of Mongolia and the plant that you set up that makes these beautiful slippers. Let's have a look at it.
Hello, my name is Sugar. I'm the production department leader for Tova company in Mongolia. Mongolia is the country where it's full of livestock, and for centuries our ancestors had been living in the ger, which is the dwelling made of the felt. You may know that Mongolia is the country where the felt is originated. So Tova is so lucky and so nice to bring the history of felt into their beautiful products. Every spring we visit over 50 families, hoarders families, to collect the wool to bring to Darhan, the production center of Tova. And there we have over 60 people working, our permanent workers, the skilled artisans that are handicrafting Tova products. And it's really touchy and very sensitive products that's made of many hands involved into the products. And we are so happy to be the Tova producers. Thank you very much for your attention.
So that gives us an idea of what goes on in Mongolia when it comes to making slippers. It looks like hard work, but also strangely quite sensual, working with wool. Tell me, I mean, I was going to ask you how much you knew about sheep and wool before you went there, but Inga, you've already told me that you grew up surrounded by sheep and goats, and so you must have felt quite at home.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I didn't grow up in a farm, but I grew up together with farmers, though, and having my summers around the farms and doing small bits and pieces together with them. And when fall came, I used to go with them and gather the sheep before the winter. So that was my experience with sheep. Later, when I became a builder, I was building log houses, and then we used wool for insulation between the logs, which is quite a good insulation material. And this is what we have seen later as well when we started to work with wool as a more or less a textile, that the wool has extremely good insulation effects in a way. But what most people don't know, felt in itself, it's originated actually from the border area between Mongolia and Russia in a huge mountain ridge called the Altai Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So the oldest and the biggest, in a way, finds of felted wool you can find in this area dated back to 600 years BC. So you see the history of wool and felted wool in Mongolia, it's really a long history. 1,000 years later, we can see the first finds in Norway, actually. So Mongolia was very early using wool to become felt. And then they made this by hand, and they used horse to make a certain movement, having rolls behind the horse, making felt for tents, making felts for boots for the herders, and later it became mechanically. While what we did when we came to Mongolia, we started to help them doing this by hand again. So we are taking the history back. So our felting is less mechanically and mostly by hand,
as we saw in the video. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And the wool that you use, this merino wool, comes from a particular breed of sheep that was facing extinction. Am I correct in that?
Well, that's right. When we lived there, we were also having a project that was connected to sheep breeding, trying to take care and purify the breed of this sheep, which we call it merino sheep in a way, because they are it's a small group of sheep which provides a fine and a semi-fine merino wool. Normally you think that we will find this kind of wool in Australia and New Zealand, but there are some in this part of the world as well. And this wool is giving very soft quality compared with, for example, the traditional Mongolian sheep, which is quite rough yeah. Wool and makes quite stiff products.
Mm-hmm.
So the breed is common, original from Russia many years ago, and has become a small Mongolian breed actually.
And how I mean, you go to Mongolia, then how complicated was it to set up the production site in Mongolia? And how was it easy or hard to find and train the workers, or how did that take place?
We established our company approximately 5 years after we started living there. So what we did, we bought some buildings in a former Russian military area. It was called the battalion. So now we have a factory in battalion, in houses that was old military barracks, quite poor conditions of these houses. So we have done several improvements to make a handicraft factory into this old barracks. When we came there, approximately 2,000 Mongolians had been trained by Norwegian Eide in felting. So there were quite many people that had some knowledge, but from having knowledge to become a skilled felter, and we needed to give quite much advices to help them to make the products having the quality we knew that the market demanded. So setting up the factory, yes, that was quite something, but making the skills to a certain level, that was maybe the most challenging thing. But I want to underline the most important was that we had a very good a couple of Mongolians that has been into this aid project that has been very helpful, and they have been the crucial part of this project in a way.
Right. And what difference has this made to the lives of your employees? I mean, were these people unemployed before, or how have their lives changed since you set up this plant?
A lot of these workers, they come from families where their parents and their grandparents were nomads. So they originated from the countryside, most of them, and then they moved into the city where we stayed, and they tried to adapt to the city life, which was quite difficult. So they moved from a life being farmers and nomads to being unemployed youngsters. So these people got employed for the first time of their life. They have never been employed. They maybe have had temporary work someplace, but never have had steady work.
Wow.
So that was the number one, going from having temporary work to having everyday work and having every month and the whole year. So that made that was you had to change your attitude, because I remember it was summer when they went on summer holiday. They didn't come back, of course, because then they were nomads, so they wanted to continue with the holiday. They wanted to continue the nomadic life, and then we started over again and collected them and had to start the production again. So this was the start. But you asked about how this affect the lives, and having steady work, that we know from our culture, that gives us a possibility to loan, to having loan, which give you the opportunity to buy you a flat or a house, and this is maybe one of the biggest things for them. They have got loan from the bank, and they can move from their tent to their new built house because they have got steady income. And also small things, which is quite big. We give them a health insurance, which they can go to the hospital and receive treatments for free. Every day they have a dinner at work. We give them a hot meal every day, which is important because many of them they are hardworking, and many of them have been quite poor. So having a meal per day is quite important.
I'm also pretty interested. It just occurred to me to know. I mean, how do you think this experience affected the lives of your very young children when you took them out there? I mean, because children, they don't care about who speaks what language or whatever. They just immediately jump in. I mean, now they're obviously much older. How do they look back at that time in Mongolia?
Yeah, I think this has going to Mongolia. It has been really a change for our whole family. So the oldest, we found her speaking Mongolian to friends on the street, and one day we suddenly realized she also knew some German because she had met a German girl. So this ability to adapt, I think this has really followed them along the way. And our oldest daughter, she's really reaching out to people. She's really
confident,
really simple, yeah, and open to new things around her. Yeah. And the youngest one, I think they also experience this. They have a second home somewhere, even though they were quite young. We have gone back sometimes, and they feel very much at home. The food tastes right, the smells are right, so they know that they belong also there. Yeah,
I think that's wonderful, and I think in a way that's one of the greatest gifts you could give to your children is an experience like that. And I'm sure I can quite understand how it's probably done them an awful lot of good in their lives. Did they go to school there? I mean, were they to Mongolian school or?
The eldest, there were one other Norwegian family, so we were lucky to have a teacher that could have Norwegian classes with her, and our son, he went to Mongolian kindergarten. So he had to learn the hard way. Yeah, yeah. So wrestling is the national sport in Mongolia. So there were quite much wrestling in the kindergarten. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Okay, let's talk about the slippers because I think we should. I'd love to know about the design process. Are the slippers based on a traditional Norwegian design, or how did you come up? Because they have a very particular sort of form to them.
Yes. First, when we were thinking of what to make in our project or in our business, then we thought our main goal is to give people work. So we need to find a product that demands quite a lot of work, and it demands high qualified felters. So then we ended up with slippers. It's maybe one of the most complicated things you can felt, because you need to have really even and nice felt. It shouldn't be thick in some areas and thin in some areas. And you need to have the firmness, but still the softness that gives the warm feeling. So in this way, starting to do slippers was something we came up with. And because Norwegians, we are very much used to wearing woolen slippers. The first, I think in 1850, we started making slippers in Norway, and then we had this old traditional slipper. I think a lot of Norwegians, they know this from their grandfather, and we have had them as children, and it's been made in Norway since way back when. And this product was about to disappear because the people didn't make it anymore. So we took this product to our felters in Mongolia and taught them how to do it in the original way, and brought back the slipper into the market. So this is in somehow a very traditional Norwegian product. And still we need to adapt it to the trends and the modern times. So having the low slippers like the ones I'm wearing. We're wearing slippers today.
There we are. Yeah. Great. Of course.
Yeah,
Like this.
yeah, we have to have slippers at work. So.
Yeah. So look on the wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Could you tell me something about the special qualities of merino wool and why it's so good for slippers? I mean, I'd love to know, for example, can you wear them outdoors, or are they waterproof? Can you wash them? I don't know.
Yeah. The unique thing about the felting is that it creates one of the warmest materials in the world. It's layers of layers with wool fibers, and they are hooked together, and it creates this really tight material that it's high insulation qualities, and it's windproof, and it's water repellent, and it's all naturally because the wool is it contains this lanolin that's a kind of soap, but also a bit of fat in it, and it gives natural water repellent. Having this material, you can have your slippers, you can find them, they are really giving you warm feet. They are not made for outdoor use as we make them. We have the leather sole on them, but now we have started to make slippers also with a waterproof sole. And that means you can wear them outdoor, out in your garden, or if you're on a ship, you can wear them out on the deck. Mm-hmm. Sailors, they like them very much because they are non-slippery. So this is really a good sole. If you asked about washing, and I must give you a warning, if you put this in your washing machine, it will shrink maybe 2 sizes down. Yeah, and that's because the way we make them, we felt them and they are wet, and then we put a shoe last into the slipper that blocks it out. And if you make this wet again, it will go back to its original shape. That means a lot smaller. So don't wash it, but you can remove the stains by having just a cloth with some washing detergent and just move the stains. And it's one more good thing about this is the wool is self-cleansing, so it don't give you smelly feet. Yeah, it breathes.
It's a wonderful material, wool. Yes. It's just fantastic. Yeah, it's great. And in your marketing, you kind of strapline you use is shoes for life, and is that to do with, is that because sustainability is part of the whole concept?
Yeah, it's we think that. When we set up Tova, our main goal is to give people work so that they can have good lives. When we lived there, people often came to us asking to borrow money or asking for what they needed, and we found out the best way of helping people is to give them work. Gives dignity. You can use your skills and what you are good at, and you earn an income. And then it's important that this income is high enough that you can create the kind of life that you want to live. And I think this is universal. We all want to have good life for our family, for our children. Mm-hmm. And by providing work, we want this work and this job to change lives. So in this way, we want to make shoes that can change lives, but also having this natural product and it's high quality. We also want it to be a long-lasting product, and also it doesn't give any harmful effects to our planet. We use natural materials and produce in a natural way. So in this way, it's this circle of life in a way, providing work, helping people to help themselves.
No, I think you explained that brilliantly, Margunn. I mean, I totally agree with you about the importance of work, and not just because it gives you access to material things. I mean, you know, obviously, if you're earning a wage, you can go out and buy things, but also because psychologically, it gives you a sense of belonging and importance of being part of something. I think, and I think you're right. That's very important. Unemployment is a terrible thing for sure. Are you working on new? Are you working on new styles or other? What about other ways of using the wool? I mean, clothes or is it or hats or I don't know. Is it or is it just going to be?
Yeah, it's a good question because throughout the years we've been testing all kinds of things because we wanted to have this create as many jobs as possible. So we've been doing coats and interior products and hats, but then we have to come back to what are we really good at? And we are really good at making slippers. So in this way, we are cooperating with a Norwegian designer, and he also says we will focus on products that keep you warm, and we will make the best slippers in the world. That is our. So we don't put up. We have a high goal in our business. Yeah.
No, I think
we're working on something, and we are looking into having like the best mittens in the world. So that is something. Yeah.
I love that. Great.
So insoles for shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to, much better to do one thing really well than to do many things not so well. I quite agree. If you're really good at making slippers, then why make anything else? But yeah, good for you. Ingar and Margunn, this episode is pre-recorded, so we can't take questions, which we would normally do if it was a live program. And I know that people watching will have questions. And one of those questions will be, where can they buy your slippers, particularly in the United States or Canada? Do you sell over there, or how do people if people want to buy your slippers, how do they go about it?
Yeah, we have made it very difficult to find our slippers.
Good for you. Yeah.
We've been dealing with this for 15 years now, and of course the most natural market to target was Norway. And we are making annually 20,000, 25,000 pairs of slippers. And most of it goes to the Norwegian market, actually, Norway and Sweden. So if you are in the United States and you want to buy a pair of slippers, then you need to go to Fairbanks, Alaska. There is a small shop selling our slippers. but we are actually in international places abroad from Norway, quite few. A little bit in Germany, and that's it. So the best place of buying the slippers are actually in Norway or on the boats.
On the Viking trips. Yeah.
On the Viking trips, because we have not focused too much on the export market, as the domestic market has been quite big in Norway.
And I guess you have a website. Is it possible to buy the slippers by going online and to your website?
We have a website where you can see the slippers, and we have a web shop. But for the time being, it's for Norwegian customers. So our best advice is buy them if you are traveling in Norway. They are in a lot of shops here, or buy them on board the Viking ships. There you can find them.
The address of the website?
The address of the website is Tova shop.
So that's we'll put it up at the end, but it's Tova, Tova, which is Norwegian for felt. Is that right?
That's right.
That's the Norwegian word when you are felting. It's Tova.
And so it's Tova shop, one word.
Yeah, tovashop.no.
Okay, but if I understand you correctly, you're saying you either need to go to Alaska, or you have to go to Norway, or you have to go on a cruise if you want these slippers. You don't make it easy.
Oh, and the last option is Mongolia then.
Or Mongolia, yeah.
Go to Mongolia.
That's great. That's lovely. Yeah, because I was on the ship when I went to Antarctica in last December. I was on the Octantis, the Viking explorer ship, and there they were. Yeah, your Tova slippers were there, and they went all the way to Antarctica. That's great. Yeah.
I think they
Sorry?
I think they belong there in the environment for the warm slippers.
Exactly. Yeah, the perfect place. Ingar and Margunn, thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to us. I think it's fascinating, and I really congratulate you on being so brave as to go and set up what you set up and making it a success. So thank you again for giving us your time. And I did order, as I told you earlier, I 10 days ago when I knew I was going to be talking to you, I ordered a pair of Tova slippers, and they're on their way. They haven't arrived. I was hoping I'd be able to wear them right now, but they haven't arrived yet. They'll probably come tomorrow. That's what'll typically happen. And I'm looking forward to trying them out and see how they go. So thank you so much, and I wish you well. Take care of yourselves, and maybe one day see you on a cruise ship.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.